Okay, as we get started today, I want to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about the two formats of the stamps that Stampin' Up! Sells. And the first one that I will cover briefly is a style that we call cling. It is the traditional red rubber stamp with the foam layer underneath it, and it has a label on the back, and it has a really good sticky surface here so that you can mount that onto a clear acrylic block, and it's going to stay nice and snug while you work with it. And then of course you'll have the image showing through the clear block when you're actively working with that stamp. When it's time to take it off, you want to get your fingers kind of underneath it. Don't just yank, because sometimes that decal can be so well adhered to the acrylic block that you might just damage the stamp. So you kind of want to get your fingertips underneath there so that you know that you are getting that pulled off safely. And then once it's cleaned, you can put it back in its case to store it. That's not the type of stamp that I'm going to be working with tonight, or today, excuse me. However, I will say tonight probably a couple of times, because the truth is I'm actually recording this at nighttime. Please forgive me. I know we're going to look at it in the morning hours. Okay, the next type of stamp that Stampin' Up! Has is, we call these photopolymer, and they are clear. Now you'll notice a couple of these are stained a bit. It is not unusual for these to stain, especially if you have used them in red or pink or some other color that has red in it, in its formulation. And that's not a problem. But when they come, they're very clear like this when they're brand new. It just happens to be I've used those already in some red inks. When they come to you, they're going to actually be on a sheet of plastic. Let me see if I can take this off of here and give you an idea of how this started. So they're going to be mounted on a sheet like this, and they will come inside a case like this, and all of the images will be mounted onto there. Personally, I have found it a lot easier to handle storage issues and inventory issues, for that matter, to take this sheet, strip all the stamps off of it, take this sheet, fold this case back on itself a little bit, and that opens up this area here, and then I can stick this piece right in here, and I have used a couple of pieces of Scotch tape, one at the top and one at the bottom, to anchor it in place. And then when I close this back up, now you're going to see the image through the clear part of the case. These stick very nicely just to the inside of the case. And that is how I can tell whether I have all the stamps to a set or not. If, I might be missing one. You can probably see at this point that there is indeed a stamp missing from right here. If you can't read it backwards, I can see it from the backside where it says Happy Mother's Day. So obviously somewhere along the line I have not replaced the Mother's Day stamp from when I used it a few weeks ago. And before I put this stamp set away, it will be my intent to locate that stamp. So this is the stamp set I'm going to be demonstrating with today. I love this set. It's got these beautiful tulips in here, 3 different sizes of tulips, 3 different styles of leaves, 2 stems, and a whole bunch of wonderful sentiments that some of them are a little outdated for showing this at the end of May. One says Happy Easter, Happy Spring. We're not going to work with that one today. We're obviously not going to work with the one that says Happy Mother's Day. But there's other ones here. Hello, happy birthday, get well soon. May the memories of yesterday comfort you today. What a beautiful difference a single life makes. So those are certainly sentiments that you can pretty much use year round. And I think that these tulips would be, they obviously are perfect for springtime. I think there's nothing wrong with using tulips all the way through summertime as well. So let's get started. I have pulled out a selection of acrylic blocks here, and you don't need to own this many acrylic blocks. It just happens that I do own that many because I have done lots and lots of card classes in the past, and we use a lot of acrylic blocks when we have multiple people sitting around the table using them. So when I'm home by myself, I take advantage of having this many, and I can then mount all the stamps pretty much at the same time. So I know that ultimately I'm going to be using this larger tulip, so I'm going to match that to one of these. This is a size C block. You don't have to memorize that. It just is. I've got a couple of smaller ones here. Let's see. I think I'll put this one here and this one here. And I think maybe I won't do the leaves yet, but I've got a couple of stems, so I'm going to go ahead and mount those onto these longer thin blocks. These are H. These are H size blocks. And I'm not sure I'm going to use this right away. Okay, set this aside for the time being. Now, the cling stamps that I showed you a moment ago, you may recall, have a layer of foam between the red rubber part where the image is cut and on the other side you've got your decal. So you've got your layer of foam in here. The foam actually helps you get a nice clean stamped image. However, when you're working with the photopolymer stamps, you'll notice that there is no layer of foam. So we compensate for that by putting a layer of foam underneath the surface that we're going to be stamping on. And I like to use just a piece of printer paper. I get a lot of life out of it. I'll show you some of my messy stuff from previous stamping. I usually will take a piece, fold it in half, start my project with a fresh side, and this prevents any excess ink from messing up the foam sheet. So the first project I'm going to make for you is really pretty simple, and I'm going to be working with these 4 colors today. These are from the Brights collection. We've got the Granny Apple Green that we talked about earlier, and Gorgeous Grape, Melon Mambo, and Mango Melody. So let's get started here. I'm going to work with, let's see, the very first thing I need to do is get my sentiment out here, because I think I'm going to start with doing my sentiment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting this, it says happy birthday. It has a flat side, and that's the side that's going to go on the block. And it also has, in fact, I think I'm just going to run it this way. Actually, I'm going to move this out of my way. I'm working with I'm a little more cramped when I'm doing a video than when I'm just usually stamping. I'm going to use the grid paper. You've probably noticed I have Stampin' Up's grid paper underneath me here. I always stamp on grid paper. I want to get this lined up as well as possible on that grid. And now I'm going to stare at this surface right here. So it's the lower edge that's facing me. And I'm going to take that edge, visually align it with any arbitrary line here on the grid paper, and lay it down so that edge is in alignment with the grid. And I should have this theoretically straight. But before I put it on my card and run the potential chance that it is not mounted straight on here, I'm going to stamp on my grid paper and just double check that. Interesting. Well, we'll go with this. I was going to use the get well soon, but I pulled out the happy birthday, so we'll just stick with happy birthday. What I'm looking at now as I'm about to lay this down, notice when I stamp, I have both hands on that stamp. I want nice and sturdy. I don't want to be shaking. I don't want to be rocking it or anything like that. I use these fingers down here on the paper, and I'm holding this above the surface at the moment, so I'm not going to accidentally, smudge. If my card was right there, for instance, I don't want to accidentally smudge my card. So I'm bracing my hands with my pinkies here, and I again am going to be looking at this edge, and I want to lay it right down on a parallel line here and just set it straight down. Notice no shaking, no rocking or anything, because I had my hands on the paper already. Now, do you see here? I'm not happy with this. Birthday seems to be a little bit too high. It seems to kind of go uphill. So what I'm going to do is take the birthday end. I'm going to use my finger and anchor the other end. I'm just going to peel this off slightly and move that birthday down a little bit. And let's see if that has made a difference. Again, I'm looking at this surface. Oh, excuse me, I think I might be off camera. Okay, now I overcompensated, didn't I? So some people, this kind of thing drives them nuts. If you're one of those people, skip this part. If you're one of those people that goes, oh my gosh, it's a millimeter off, it's not straight, this is how you straighten it up. So first, my birthday was going uphill. I adjusted it, and then it was going downhill. And so I kind of split the difference, and now it's going straight. So now that I know, excuse me, I got to clean some of the ink off my fingers. I played with the pads a little too long, I think, and I got too much ink on my hands. So be it. Inky fingers are just fine. So here's where the problem was. I got ink on here, and then every time I touched the pad, I was picking up ink onto my fingers. So it's a good idea to have some kind of a damp rag next to you so you can clean things like that up. You want to keep the outsides of your pads nice and clean. Otherwise, you wonder how come your ink is always getting on your fingers. It's because every time you touch the case, you're picking up ink. Okay. So now my happy birthday is kind of where I want it to be in terms of straight on the block. And why in the world does that matter, Linda? Why are you doing that? Okay, here's the why. I'm going to ink this up. I'm going to stamp on my foam because I am working with a photopolymer stamp set. And so I have decided that I want my greeting to be right about here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stare at this only long enough to make sure I've kind of got it in the general location of where I want it to stamp. However, what I'm really going to be looking at is, again, this line right here. Excuse me, I'm off the camera again. I just don't have very much space here. All right, we're going to try this again. My explanation. Right around here is where I want my sentiment to be. So I'm going to place this so that the words are right around there. But what I'm really going to be paying attention to is this edge of the block right here, this lower edge right there. I want that to be parallel to the bottom of my card. If it is, then that happy birthday is going to be on there straight. Okay, so I'm not staring at happy birthday anymore. I'm staring at the block and making sure that it's parallel to the bottom edge of my card, and then straight up. All right, so if you've never stamped before, it's get your positioning, make sure your fingers are down on, your pinkies are down on the paper, holding everything down. Get things aligned the way you want them to be, and then lower that to the paper. Count about to 3, and then straight up. And when you come straight up, hold your paper down because it will often want to pop up with it. And that is the most common point at which people get a smeary image. All right. So I'm going to now now that I've explained some of the technique stuff, I think I can go a little faster in my project here. I'm going to work with the Granny Apple Green and some stems here. And we're going to, let's see, we're going to come in kind of let's sort of do that. Okay? Ta-da! Isn't that exciting? Oh, more ink on my fingers, excuse me. Clean my finger a little more. All right. And now, let's see. Let's take this one and kind of come in we're just going to use a little bit of a stem coming that direction. And let's take this one and come in, say like that. So we've got space for 3 tulips now, because we've got the stems in place. So for the time being, because I have a bad habit of sticking a stamp into the wrong color, so I try to remember to close a color if I'm not using it. That reduces the odds that I'm going to stick the wrong stamp in. I typically will do this before I go in. I just want to make sure that that is in fact a clean stamp. It is. It looks like it's got pink on it because it's been stained. All right, so I am now going into Gorgeous Grape here. And what I like to do when I've taken a clean stamp, I don't think I did it before, but I want to show you what I prefer to do here, is take the first stamping and put it on my scrap paper. And then I'm going to go back and re-ink it and then stamp with it. The reason that I'm doing that is you will generally get a more deeper inking the second time you ink it. So I'm going to use the mid-sized tulip now. Stamp one time here. Notice how it's kind of a little bit faded right in there. But the second time it's inked, it's probably going to look a little better. Okay, see, that's a little more intense. And now I'm going to go back to the smaller one. And we're going to send this tulip off in this general direction. There we go. So what's missing? Leaves? Okay, we're going to use 2 of the styles. This wider wavy one here and then a slimmer one. And I think I want to use this block, except it's got Happy Birthday on it. So I'm going to have to clean this up. And I take the excess ink off on my scrap paper and then use the chamois to clean any excess ink that might be on there. This, when you get it, when you purchase it, you might find that it's a little bit moist when you first open the package. It does not come in this container. This is one of our stamp containers that you can purchase individually. I just think it's a really nice, handy place to keep my chamois when I'm, handling it. I've also punched a couple of holes, one right there and one right here, so that even when it's closed, it gets ventilation, so that when I'm done stamping, I can put this away in its case and not worry about it staying too wet and potentially getting mildewy or something like that. It'll just go ahead and continue drying. There's no particular cleaner on here. I just use water only. And when I start a stamping session, I will usually just go straight to the kitchen sink and just get it very, very damp, but it dries quite quickly, especially in my apartment where it's very dry air at this time of year. Okay, what am I looking for now? I think I need green. If we're going to do leaves, we need green, don't we? Forgot. The whole purpose of my cleaning this stamp was to put it away. So it says Happy Birthday, and it lives right there. Eventually, all of the stamps will get cleaned and get put away again. I'm going to take this, and first stamping goes there after it's started out clean. And then where do we want to go from here? I think we'll do this. And this. And maybe one heading off that direction. I think these leaves are so pretty. I love that one particularly because of its wonderful swirl. And now we'll use this one. And when you may have noticed that when I'm tapping on here, I'm only tapping very lightly, but a lot of times. This actually is foam, and it is physically possible with a heavy hand that you can actually embed this whole entire stamp piece down into the foam, smearing ink all over your block and up the sides and the edges of this stamp image, and also in making a physical impression in the ink pad. That's a no-no. It's possible to do if you're heavy-handed. We don't want to be heavy-handed. We just want to go tap, 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 but a whole bunch of times, and preferably all around the surface here, because if you always hit right in the middle, then you're going to run out of ink really fast, even though there's plenty of ink around the outer edges. So I tend to go all around like that, pick up my ink, and okay, where am I going to go now? Lay this down right about here. And I think I might want another bit of leaf right about here. Okay, I apologize for going out of frame. But this is what we've got right now. You know what? I'm going to put one more in. And then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So let's just do a leaf coming into that space right there. It's a little more balanced looking to me. Okay, so I have decided that I would like to put a bow right there. And I could do it in white, but I want something with a little more character, a little more customization here. And I'm going to take this white ribbon. It's got silver edges. Isn't that pretty? I'm going to take about 10 inches of it approximately. Set that aside. And now, this is the light Granny Apple Green Stampin' Blends marker, and I'm going to use the brush tip here. I'm actually going to use strokes right on to the ribbon. Now our blends are alcohol-based markers, and they work beautifully for coloring images, but I also like to use them to color accessories with. Okay, now I'm going to let this dry for a moment. All right, so we're just going to tie a bow. Now I like to put my fingers down in the loops once I've got this kind of sloppy version of bow here, and then now I'm going to take hold of the tails and pull the tails. And when I pull the tails, that makes the loops smaller in size. I've got a weird twist right there. It's bugging me. Okay, one more time. Pull the tails and then pull the loops. The loops actually tighten the knot in the center. And then pull the tails some more, pull the loops some more, and now we've got it kind of how we want it. So we'll just kind of adjust the tails a little bit. I like to point them downwards. Not everybody does a bow the same way, but that's kind of my style right there. Grab a pair of scissors and trim these guys off a bit. All right, now we have a bow. And I'm going to bring in, Mini glue dots. Now, when you purchase the mini glue dots, they're going to come in a box. This whole roll will be inside of a box. My suggestion is the first thing you do is take this whole entire roll, including the core, out of the box, flatten the box, and recycle it. You do not need the box, and it's better not to have the box because you always want to be able to see what your outer edge looks like. What you want to do is hold this core now so that this loose piece of paper is facing away from you. So I've got this is facing me, that's facing away. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to pull this up until I reveal the very first dot. Can you see that? Maybe you can catch the reflection. There's a glue dot right there. It's clear, it's sticky, and what I'm going to do is take this bow and I'm going to put the knot part directly over that glue dot, and I'm going to peel it up, and now the glue is right there. You can't see it because it's clear. Trust me, it's there. And now I'm going to position this right on my card, and now it's got the bow right where I want it. Isn't that an easy way to attach that? I love these glue dots. Now to store this, you want to keep this extra piece of this flap of paper here just in place because you don't want any of these glue dots exposed while you're not using it. Eventually, now the next time to use it, I will pull it this far back to expose the next one. And the next time I use it, I will pull it that far back. Eventually, you're going to have a fairly long piece of scrap paper here. And at that point, I just tear it off, making sure that it is still covering every single dot all the way around here. You don't want any of those dots exposed or you'll end up with a really big mess. Okay, so I've already stamped the coordinating envelope in advance, and now we've got this wonderful card and envelope combination.